My wife told her mom she couldn't live on my pathetic salary and filed for divorce. I agreed to everything: the house, the car, the alimony. She thought she won. Then her lawyer made one phone call that changed everything. Turns out the warehouse guy she divorced was hiding something she never thought to ask about. My name is Graham Wells. I'm 48 years old, and for the last 12 years, I've been married to a woman who thought she knew exactly who I was. A warehouse supervisor at Midland Distribution earning $52,000 a year. A man who clocked in at 7, clocked out at 4, and came home smelling like cardboard and diesel fumes. A man too simple, too satisfied, too small to want anything more than a pension and a quiet retirement in some forgettable suburb outside Charlotte, North Carolina. She wasn't entirely wrong. That job was real. The paycheck was real. The grease under my fingernails every night, that was real too. But what Claire never asked about, never cared to investigate, was what I did after she went to bed. The laptop that stayed open until 3 a.m. The phone calls I took in the garage at odd hours. The reason I kept 3 separate email accounts and a P.O. box in a town 30 miles away. I pulled into the driveway that afternoon, windows down, radio humming some forgettable country tune. The bed of my truck was loaded with groceries: chicken breasts, a case of sparkling water Claire liked, the expensive Greek yogurt she swore tasted different even though it was twice the price of the store brand. I always bought what she wanted, never questioned it. That's who I was to her. Agreeable, invisible, safe. The front door was cracked open. Not unusual. Claire loved leaving it open when the weather was nice. Said it made the house feel less stuffy. I grabbed the bags and pushed through with my shoulder, careful not to let the screen door slam. That's when I heard her voice, bright and animated in a way I hadn't heard directed at me in years. "Mom, I'm serious. I can't live on his pathetic salary anymore." I froze. Right there in the hallway, plastic handles digging into my palms, a carton of eggs threatening to slide out of the overstuffed bag. Her mother's voice crackled through the speakerphone, loud enough that I could hear every word. "Honey, you've been patient long enough. Some men just don't have it in them to aim higher." Claire laughed. Not a kind laugh. Sharp, dismissive. "He doesn't even try, Mom. He's been at that warehouse for a decade like it's some kind of achievement. Meanwhile, I'm out here trying to keep up appearances, and he thinks bringing home $52,000 a year is something to be proud of." I should have walked in. Should have dropped the bags on the counter and asked her what the hell she was talking about. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen, listening to my wife dismantle me piece by piece to the one person who'd never liked me in the first place. "I mean, he's sweet," Claire continued, her voice softening just enough to twist a knife. "He never fights me on anything. But that's the problem, isn't it? He's just there, like a piece of furniture. No ambition, no fire. I need more than a man who comes home tired and falls asleep watching Pawn Stars." Her mother made a sympathetic noise. "You deserve better, sweetheart. You've always deserved better." "I know," Claire said quietly. "I'm calling Patricia tomorrow. She handled Jenna's divorce, and Jenna walked away with everything. I think it's time." I set the bags down slowly, carefully, like if I moved too fast the whole moment would shatter and I'd wake up somewhere else. But it didn't shatter. It just sat there, heavy and undeniable, like a boulder someone had dropped in the middle of my chest. I turned around, walked back out the door, and sat in my truck for 20 minutes. Hands on the wheel. Engine off. Just breathing. Claire had no idea who I really was. And maybe that was my fault. I'd spent years keeping my head down, playing the part of the simple man with a simple job. I'd let her believe the story because it was easier. Because it kept everything I'd built safe and separate from the chaos of ego and expectation. But now she wanted out, and she thought she was leaving a man with nothing. I started the engine, backed out of the driveway, and drove to the only place that ever made sense to me anymore. The small office Kyle and I rented under a fake LLC name in a strip mall next to a dentist and a martial arts studio. Kyle looked up when I walked in, his fingers still flying across the keyboard. "You're early," he said. "Thought you had grocery duty. Change of plans?" I replied, dropping into the chair across from his desk. "Claire's filing for divorce." Kyle stopped typing. "What?" Overheard her on the phone with her mom. "Apparently, my salary's pathetic, and I'm too boring to keep around." He leaned back, arms crossed, studying me like he was waiting for the punchline. "And you're just gonna let her?" I shrugged. Why not? She wants out. I'll make it easy. Kyle shook his head slowly. You know she's going to come after everything, right? The house, the car, alimony. Let her, I said. She doesn't even know what she's walking away from. And that's when I realized something that almost made me smile. Claire thought she was divorcing a nobody, a man stuck in a dead-end job with no prospects and no future. But Graham Wells, warehouse supervisor, was just a name on a W-2. The real Graham Wells owned something else entirely. Something worth a hell of a lot more than $52,000 a year. And she was about to find out. I didn't go back home that night. Told Claire I had to cover an overnight shift at the warehouse. A lie she believed because she'd never once questioned my schedule in 12 years. Instead, I stayed at the office with Kyle, going through every document, every structure, every layer of protection we'd built into Property Link Solutions. The company had been Kyle's idea originally. He'd been working as a software developer for a property management firm back in 2015, watching them struggle with outdated systems that couldn't talk to each other. Rent collection on one platform, maintenance requests on another, tenant screening on a third. It was a mess, and Kyle saw the opportunity. He pitched me the concept over beers one night, sketching it out on a napkin. A single integrated platform that could handle everything a landlord needed. Automated rent collection, maintenance tracking, tenant communication, even lease renewals. Clean interface, mobile-friendly, affordable for small operators who couldn't afford the enterprise solutions. I'd invested $30,000 of inheritance money my grandmother left me. Money Claire never knew existed because it came through a trust I'd set up before we got married. Within 3 years, we had 200 clients. Within 5, we had partnerships with property management companies across 6 states. Kyle handled the development. I handled the business side, sales, contracts, client relations. All under the table, all through an LLC registered in Delaware with my cousin's name on the paperwork. To the IRS, I was a consultant receiving irregular payments. To Claire, I was just her husband who sometimes worked late. You should have told her, Kyle said around midnight, leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed. Years ago, before it got this big. I shook my head. She never asked, man. Not once. She assumed, and I let her assume. That's on both of us. Still, Kyle pressed. She's your wife. You don't think she deserved to know? I thought about that for a long moment, staring at the spreadsheet on my screen showing our quarterly revenue. $2.3 million this quarter alone. My cut, after expenses and Kyle's share, was just over $800,000. Maybe, I finally said. But you know what? She made it real clear tonight what she thinks of me. That warehouse supervisor making $52,000. That's who she married. That's who she's leaving. Everything else was always mine, not ours. Kyle didn't argue. He just nodded and went back to his screen. The next morning, I went home. Showered, changed, made coffee like nothing had happened. Claire came downstairs around 8, already dressed, makeup perfect. She gave me that tight smile she'd been using for months now. Polite, distant, the smile you'd give a stranger. Morning, I said simply, handing her a cup of coffee the way she liked it. She took it without meeting my eyes. Thanks. We sat at the kitchen island in silence. The kind of silence that used to be comfortable, but now felt like standing in a room with all the oxygen sucked out. Finally, Claire set down her cup. We need to talk. I looked at her, kept my face neutral. Okay. I think. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I think we've been going through the motions for a while now, and I don't think either of us is happy. I nodded slowly. You're probably right. She blinked, clearly surprised I wasn't fighting. So you agree? Yeah, I said. If you're not happy, Claire, then we shouldn't keep pretending. Her shoulders relaxed slightly, like she'd been bracing for a battle that never came. I think we should separate. Maybe start the process of, making it official. Divorce, I said flatly. Yes. She looked down at her coffee. I've already talked to an attorney. Patricia Drummond. She's really good. Helped my friend Jenna last year. She said we can keep it simple if we both agree to be reasonable. Sure, I replied. Whatever makes it easier. Claire studied me, her brow furrowing slightly. You're taking this really well. I shrugged. What's the point of making it harder than it needs to be? You want out. I'm not going to fight you. She opened her mouth, closed it, then stood up. Okay then. Patricia will draw up the papers. We can go over everything next week. Sounds good. She walked out, leaving her coffee half finished on the counter. I sat there alone, listening to her car pull out of the driveway, and allowed myself the smallest smile. She had no idea what was coming. Patricia Drummond's office was exactly what I expected. Glass walls, minimalist furniture, abstract art that probably cost more than my truck. The kind of place designed to intimidate people who didn't know better. I sat in the waiting room wearing my warehouse uniform, boots, cargo pants, company polo with a grease stain on the sleeve I hadn't bothered to wash out. Claire arrived 10 minutes after me, dressed like she was going to a business meeting. Blazer, heels, that expensive bag her sister bought her for Christmas. She barely glanced at me when she walked past. Patricia emerged from her office, mid-50s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. She shook Claire's hand warmly, then extended the same courtesy to me with considerably less enthusiasm. "Mr. Wells," Patricia said, "thank you for coming." We followed her into the conference room. Patricia sat at the head of the table, Claire to her right. I took the seat across from my wife, folded my hands, and waited. Patricia opened a folder, scanning the documents inside. I've prepared a preliminary asset division based on what Claire provided. The goal here is to make this as painless as possible for both parties. "Sound good," I said. Patricia continued. "The house is valued at approximately $320,000. There's still a mortgage of $140,000 remaining. Claire will retain the house, and you'll sign over your interest in exchange for being released from the mortgage obligation." I nodded. "Fine. The 2019 Audi Q5 is in both names. Claire will keep the vehicle. You'll retain your 2014 Ford F-150. Okay." Claire shifted in her seat, clearly expecting more resistance. Patricia glanced at her notes. "Joint checking and savings accounts total roughly $38,000. We'll split that 50-50. Your 401k has approximately $41,000. North Carolina law requires equitable distribution of retirement assets, so Claire is entitled to half of what was accumulated during the marriage." "That's fine," I said calmly. Patricia looked up, studied me for a moment. "You're being very agreeable, Mr. Wells." I shrugged. "No point making this harder than it needs to be." "Additionally," Patricia continued, "given the disparity in earning potential and Claire's need to reestablish herself financially, we're requesting alimony of $2,000 per month for 5 years. I paused, let the number hang in the air for a moment, then nodded. "I can do that." Claire's eyes widened slightly. She'd been bracing for a fight that wasn't coming. Patricia closed the folder. "Well, this is remarkably straightforward. I'll have my assistant draw up the formal agreement. You'll need to retain your own attorney to review before signing. But if you're in agreement with these terms, we can move quickly." "I don't need an attorney," I said. "I trust the process." Patricia's eyebrows lifted. "Mr. Wells, I strongly advise you to have independent counsel review any divorce settlement." "I appreciate that," I replied, "but I'm good. Just send me the papers and I'll sign." Claire and Patricia exchanged a look, confusion mixed with something that might have been suspicion. "All right then," Patricia said slowly. "I'll have everything ready by next week." I stood, extended my hand across the table to Patricia. "Thank you for making this simple." She shook it, still looking puzzled. I walked out without looking back at Claire, climbed into my truck, and drove straight to Kyle's office. He was on a call when I walked in, but he took one look at my face and wrapped it up quickly. "How'd it go?" Kyle asked. "She wants the house, the car, half the 401k, and $2,000 a month in alimony." Kyle whistled low. "And you said?" I said yes to everything. He leaned back, a slow grin spreading across his face. "Man, she has no idea. Not a clue," I confirmed. Her lawyer asked about other assets, income sources, business interests. I said I had none. "Technically true," Kyle said. "Graham Wells, the warehouse supervisor, doesn't own anything. The LLC does." "Exactly." I dropped into the chair. "She's getting everything she thinks exists." Meanwhile, Property Link just closed another contract this morning. 12 property portfolio in Virginia. That's another $40,000 in annual revenue. Kyle pulled up the spreadsheet. "Your distributions this year are on track for $900,000, and she's taking home the Audi and calling it a win." I stared at the numbers on the screen, feeling something that wasn't quite satisfaction, but was close. She called my salary pathetic. "Yeah, well," Kyle said, "karma's going to hit her like a freight train when she figures it out." "If she figures it out," I corrected. Patricia didn't ask the right questions. And I'm not volunteering information. 3 weeks later, the papers arrived. I read through them carefully at the kitchen table while Claire was at work. 42 pages of legal language that basically said she got everything visible and I got my freedom. I signed every page without hesitation. That evening, Claire came home to find the documents waiting on the counter, my signature already in place. She picked them up, flipped through, her expression shifting from surprise to something harder to read. "You signed already?" "Yeah," I said. No reason to drag it out. She set the papers down carefully. "Graham, are you sure you don't want a lawyer to look at this? I mean, you're giving up a lot." I almost laughed. Giving up a lot. The house I'd stopped caring about 2 years ago. The car I'd never driven. The retirement account that represented maybe 3% of my actual net worth. "I'm sure," I said. "You wanted this clean and simple." "So do I." Claire studied me, and for just a second I saw uncertainty flicker across her face. Like maybe she'd expected me to fight harder, to value what we'd built together enough to make her work for it. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll take these to Patricia tomorrow." "Great." She didn't move, just stood there holding the papers like they weighed more than they should. "Why are you making this so easy?" Claire finally asked. I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to remember what it felt like when she used to look at me like I mattered. When my opinion meant something. When I was more than just the paycheck she resented. "Because you deserve to be happy," I said. And clearly, that's not with me. Something in her expression softened. Guilt, maybe, or relief that I wasn't going to make her the villain in her own story. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know this isn't what either of us planned." "No," I agreed. "It's not." She left the papers on the counter and went upstairs. I heard the bedroom door close, and then I was alone in the kitchen of a house I'd be leaving in 60 days. I pulled out my phone and texted Kyle. "Papers are signed. She's got everything she wanted." His response came immediately. "And you've got everything she doesn't know exists. When you telling her?" I thought about that. When would I tell Claire? When would she find out that the man she dismissed as small and forgettable had built something she never bothered to look for? Never, I typed back. Let her figure it out on her own. Because that was the thing about being invisible. People only saw what they expected to see, and Claire expected to see a man with nothing. She was about to learn the difference between having nothing and appearing to have nothing. And by the time she figured it out, I'd be long gone. The divorce finalized on a Tuesday morning in June. Judge signed the papers, clerk stamped them, and just like that, 12 years dissolved into a case number filed away in some courthouse basement. I wasn't there. Didn't need to be. Claire's attorney handled everything remotely, and I got the notification via email at 10:47 a.m. while I was reorganizing inventory in Bay 3. I finished my shift, clocked out at 4, and drove to the small apartment I'd rented 2 months ago, a second-floor unit in a complex near the university. Plain, functional, cheap. Exactly what a newly divorced warehouse worker making 52 grand could afford. Kyle was waiting in the parking lot when I pulled up, leaning against his Lexus with 2 beers and a grin. "Congratulations," he said, handing me a bottle. "You're officially a free man." We stood there in the fading afternoon light, drinking cheap beer, not saying much. Didn't need to. Kyle understood what this meant better than anyone. "Property Link closed another deal this morning," Kyle finally said. "Hospital system in Asheville. They're converting their entire property management infrastructure to our platform. 300 units. That's another $60,000 in annual recurring revenue." I nodded, taking a long pull from the bottle. "How's our total looking?" Kyle pulled out his phone, scrolled to the spreadsheet we kept encrypted in the cloud. "Year-to-date revenue is 3.1 million. After expenses, development costs, and my cut, your distributions are sitting at just over 950,000 for the year. And we're only in June." I stared at the number on his screen. Nearly $1 million. Meanwhile, I just agreed to pay Claire $2,000 a month, $24,000 a year, and she thought she was bleeding me dry. "She still doesn't know," I said quietly. "Why would she?" Kyle replied. "You gave her everything she could see. The house, the car, half the 401k. She thinks she won." "Maybe she did," I said. "She got what she wanted. Freedom from the boring guy with the dead-end job." Kyle shook his head. "No, man. She got exactly what she deserved. Which is nothing." We finished our beers in silence. Then Kyle clapped me on the shoulder. "You working tomorrow?" "Yeah, 7 to 4. "All right. Come by the office after." We need to talk about the expansion into Tennessee. Got 3 property management companies interested. I watched him drive away, then headed upstairs to my apartment. It was sparse, a couch, a bed, a desk with my laptop. No decorations, no memories, nothing that tied me to the life I just left behind. I opened my laptop and checked the Property Link dashboard. 47 new client inquiries this week. User growth up 18% quarter-over-quarter. The business was scaling faster than we projected, and nobody outside of Kyle and our accountant knew I had anything to do with it. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Hey, it's Jenna, Claire's friend. Heard you're single now. Want to grab coffee sometime? I stared at the message. Jenna, the one whose divorce Patricia had handled. The one Claire had mentioned as an example of how to do it right. I deleted the message without responding. 3 days later, I was stocking shelves when my supervisor found me. Wells, someone here to see you. Says it's personal. I walked to the front office, expecting maybe a delivery or something random. Instead, I found Claire standing there, looking uncomfortable in her business casual outfit, completely out of place among the pallets and forklifts. Hey, she said when she saw me. Hey. I kept my voice neutral. What are you doing here? I wanted to talk. Do you have a minute? I glanced at my supervisor. He shrugged, waved me off. I followed Claire outside to the parking lot, staying a few feet back. What's up? I asked, trying to sound curious rather than concerned. She shifted her weight, arms crossed. I've been thinking about things. About us. And I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how everything went down. Okay. I mean it, Graham. You were always good to me. You never gave me a reason to leave. I wanted more. And that's not your fault. I nodded slowly. I appreciate you saying that. Are you doing okay? Claire asked. I mean, financially and everything. I know the alimony is a lot. I'm managing, I said simply. She looked like she wanted to say more, but couldn't find the words. Finally, she just nodded. Okay. Well, take care of yourself. You too. I watched her drive away in the Audi I'd signed over, then went back inside and finished my shift. That night, Kyle texted. Claire came to see you? Yeah, I replied. Wanted to apologize. Guilt's a hell of a thing, Kyle wrote back. I thought about that. Maybe it was guilt. Or maybe Claire was starting to realize that divorcing someone wasn't the same as escaping your own dissatisfaction. That the problem wasn't me. It was her expectations. But that wasn't my problem anymore. It started small. A question Claire asked her friend Monica over brunch. Monica mentioned it to her husband, who happened to work in commercial real estate. He recognized the name Property Link from a pitch deck he'd seen at a conference. I didn't know about any of this at the time. I was too busy living my double life, warehouse supervisor by day, tech entrepreneur by night. The apartment stayed sparse, my truck stayed old, and nobody at Midland Distribution suspected that the quiet guy in Bay 3 was pulling down 6 figures a month from a software company he'd helped build. But information has a way of traveling, especially in circles where everyone knows everyone. Claire called me 3 months after the divorce finalized. I was at the office with Kyle, reviewing proposals for a partnership with a national property management firm, when my phone lit up with her name. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Yeah, I said simply, keeping my voice level. Graham. Her voice was tight. Not angry yet, but getting there. I need to ask you something. Okay. Do you know a company called Property Link Solutions? My heart rate didn't change. I'd been preparing for this conversation since the day I'd signed the divorce papers. Why? Because Monica's husband said he saw a presentation from them at some real estate conference. And he said one of the founders has the same last name as you. Wells is a pretty common name. Claire. Graham. Her voice sharpened. Is it yours? I paused, let the silence stretch just long enough. I consulted for them a few years back. Helped with some early development work. What? Consulted, she repeated slowly. What does that mean? It means I gave them advice on warehouse logistics and property management operations. They paid me some consulting fees. It wasn't a big deal. How much? Claire demanded. I don't know, maybe $30,000 over 2 years. It's been a while. Another pause. I could hear her breathing, processing. And you didn't think to mention this during the divorce. You asked if I had business interests or ongoing income sources. I said calmly. I don't. The consulting work ended in 2019. There was nothing current to disclose. Technically, every word of that was true. Graham Wells, the individual, had consulted. Graham Wells didn't own Property Link, the LLC did. And the consulting had ended years ago. The fact that I still received distributions through a completely separate legal structure wasn't something I needed to volunteer. I don't believe you, Claire said quietly. Okay, I'm going to have Patricia look into this. That's your right, I replied. But I'm telling you, there's nothing to find. I helped a startup when they were getting off the ground. That's it. She hung up without saying goodbye. Kyle looked up from his laptop. That sounded fun. She's asking questions, I said. You worry? I shook my head. Everything's structured correctly. My name isn't on any ownership documents. The consulting work was legitimate and documented. Even if Patricia digs, she'll find exactly what I just told Claire, that I did some freelance work years ago for a fee. And the LLC, registered in Delaware under your cousin's name, just like we planned. The distributions come through as investment income from a family trust that predates the marriage. It's all clean. Kyle leaned back, fingers laced behind his head. You really thought of everything. I had to, I said. The moment I realized Claire saw me as small, I knew I had to protect what I'd built. Not because I want to hurt her, but because she never bothered to see the whole picture. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Claire. Patricia wants all your financial records from the last 5 years. I typed back. I'll send everything I'm legally required to provide. But the divorce is final, Claire. This feels like you're looking for something that isn't there. She didn't respond. That night, I pulled every document I had. Tax returns, W-2s from the warehouse, bank statements from the joint accounts we'd already divided. Everything that showed Graham Wells, the warehouse supervisor. Nothing that showed Graham Wells, the silent partner in a multi-million-dollar software company. Because that person, legally speaking, didn't exist. And by the time Patricia figured out what questions to ask, it would be far too late. It happened on a Monday afternoon, 4 months after the divorce finalized. I was at the warehouse, training a new hire on forklift safety protocols, when Claire's name flashed across my phone screen. I ignored it. She called again, then again. During my break, I checked my messages. 7 missed calls from Claire. 3 voicemails. The first one was frantic. Graham, call me back right now. This is important. The second was angrier. I know you're screening my calls. Patricia found something. We need to talk. The third was just breathing, then a click. I called Kyle. Claire's losing it. Patricia must have dug deeper. What did she find? Kyle asked. Don't know yet. But whatever it is, she's panicking. That evening, Claire showed up at my apartment unannounced. I heard the pounding on the door while I was reviewing client contracts on my laptop. I opened the door. Claire stood there, face flushed, eyes wild. We need to talk. Now. Come in, I said calmly, stepping aside. She stormed past me, turned to face me in the middle of my sparse living room. Patricia hired a forensic accountant. They traced the consulting payments from Property Link back to 2015. And guess what they found? I waited, expression neutral. You're not a consultant, Graham. You're a co-founder. Your name is buried in the original incorporation documents. The accountant found equity distributions going into a trust that's been generating income this entire time. I closed the door, leaned against it. Okay. Claire's voice pitched higher. That's all you have to say? You lied to me. You lied to Patricia. You hid millions of dollars and let me walk away with nothing. I didn't lie, I said quietly. I answered every question truthfully. You asked if I had business interests. I said no. Graham Wells, the individual, doesn't own Property Link. The LLC does. That's semantics. That's the law. I corrected. The trust was established before we got married with inheritance money. Everything's premarital. You're not entitled to any of it. Claire stared at me like she'd never seen me before. You planned this. From the beginning, you planned to hide everything. No, I said. I protected what I built. There's a difference. You call my salary pathetic, Claire. You told your mother I was too small, too boring, too satisfied with nothing. So I gave you everything you thought existed. The house, the car, the retirement account. Everything that mattered to you. Her hand was shaking. Patricia says we can challenge the divorce. Reopen the case based on fraud. Good luck with that, I replied. I disclosed everything I was legally required to disclose. If your attorney didn't ask the right questions, that's not my problem. Claire's face twisted with something between rage and disbelief. I can't believe I was married to you for 12 years and never knew who you really were. I met her eyes steadily. You never asked. She left without another word, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I texted Kyle. She knows. His response came immediately. How bad? Bad. But we're clean. Everything's structured correctly. Good, Kyle wrote back. Let her lawyer try. They won't find anything actionable. I poured myself a drink and sat down at my laptop. Property Link's latest quarterly report showed revenue growth of 32%. We just signed contracts with 2 more hospital systems and university housing department. Claire could scream all she wanted. The numbers didn't lie, and neither had I. Patricia Drummond filed a motion to reopen the divorce case 3 days later, citing fraudulent concealment of assets and material misrepresentation. I received the court documents via certified mail while I was eating breakfast before my shift. I called the one attorney I'd been avoiding, Brandon Sterling, a family law specialist Kyle had recommended months ago. I'd resisted hiring him because it would have raised Claire's suspicions. Now it didn't matter. Sterling's office was downtown, sleek and expensive. He read through Patricia's motion while I sat across from his desk, hands folded. This is aggressive, Sterling said finally. But it's weak. They're arguing you concealed assets. But from what you've shown me, everything was disclosed according to the letter of the law. Exactly, I confirmed. The trust predates the marriage by 3 years, funded entirely with inheritance from my grandmother. Sterling nodded, and the LLC ownership structure was established when 2015, 4 years in a marriage, but using only premarital funds from the trust. Did Claire ever ask about the trust during the divorce proceedings? No. Patricia asked if I had business interests or ongoing income. I said no, which was true. Graham Wells doesn't own Property Link. The trust does. Sterling leaned back, a slight smile forming. You're a careful man, Mr. Wells. I'm a realistic man, I corrected. My wife made it clear she thought I was worthless, so I protected what I'd built. Well, you did it correctly. I'll file a response opposing the motion. Unless they can prove you actively lied under oath, which they can't, this won't go anywhere. The hearing happened 3 weeks later. I wore my warehouse uniform, came straight from my shift. Claire sat across the courtroom in a tailored suit, Patricia beside her looking confident. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Holloway, reviewed both motions with obvious irritation. Ms. Drummond, Judge Holloway said, you're arguing that Mr. Wells concealed assets. What specific question did you ask during discovery that he answered falsely? Patricia stood. Your Honor, we asked if he had business interests. He said no. And does Mr. Wells personally own Property Link Solutions? No, Your Honor, but does he receive regular employment income from Property Link? No, but he receives distributions from a trust established before the marriage with premarital funds. Judge Holloway interrupted. Patricia hesitated. Yes, Your Honor. Then what exactly was concealed? The existence of the trust and its value. Judge Holloway looked at me. Mr. Wells, did Ms. Drummond or her client ever ask you directly about trusts, inheritance, or premarital assets? I stood. No, Your Honor. Did anyone ask you to provide documentation of all financial accounts and holdings? They asked for documentation related to marital assets and income, Your Honor, which I provided in full. Judge Holloway closed the file. Motion denied. The divorce settlement was entered into voluntarily by both parties. Mr. Wells answered all questions truthfully. If Ms. Drummond failed to conduct adequate discovery, that's not grounds for reopening. We're done here. The gavel came down. Claire didn't look at me as she left. Patricia gathered her files with tight, angry movements. Outside, Sterling shook my hand. Congratulations. You just won twice. I drove back to my apartment, changed out of my uniform, and went to meet Kyle at the office. How'd it go? Kyle asked. Dismissed. Judge said Patricia should have asked better questions. Kyle laughed. Man, this is perfect. Claire thought she was divorcing a nobody, and now she realizes she walked away from a fortune she'll never touch. I thought about that. Perfect wasn't the word I'd use. Satisfying, maybe. Just. Fair. But not perfect. Because the truth was, I'd loved Claire once. Before she started measuring my worth by my paycheck. Before I became furniture in my own home. I'd loved her, and she'd never bothered to see me. That wasn't perfect. That was just sad. 3 months after the court dismissed Claire's motion, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Graham Wells. A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Speaking. This is Eleanor Hartman. I'm Claire's mother. I paused, surprised. Eleanor had never called me directly, not even when Claire and I were married. Mrs. Hartman, what can I do for you? There was a long silence. Then, quietly, I wanted to apologize. I sat down slowly. For what? For what I said. What I encouraged. Claire played me that conversation, the one where I laughed about your salary and told her she deserved better. She wanted me to hear it, to understand what started all this. I didn't respond, just listened. I taught her to see men as resources. Eleanor continued, her voice breaking slightly. As providers first, partners second. My husband, Claire's father, he left us when she was 12 because I spent every day telling him he wasn't enough. And then I taught my daughter to do the same thing. Mrs. Hartman. No, please. Let me finish. She took a shaky breath. Claire told me what happened in court. How you'd built something remarkable, and she never even noticed. How you answered every question honestly, and she just never asked the right ones. She's devastated, Graham. Not because of the money, though that's part of it, but because she finally sees what she threw away. I'm sorry she's hurting, I said, and meant it. She doesn't deserve your sympathy. But I wanted you to know that what you did, protecting yourself, building something in silence, that took strength, real strength. And I'm sorry I never saw that in you. Thank you for calling, I said quietly. One more thing, Eleanor added. There's a young woman in Claire's office. Jenna's friend. Actually, she's asked about you twice now. Claire gave her your number, if you're interested. I smiled slightly. I appreciate it, but I'm not looking right now. Fair enough. Take care of yourself, Graham. She hung up before I could respond. That evening, Claire texted me. My mom called you. I'm sorry if that was uncomfortable. It was fine, I replied. I've been going to therapy, she wrote, trying to figure out how I became someone who couldn't see what was right in front of me. That's good. I hope it helps. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. Did you ever love me? Or was I always just part of the cover? I stared at that message for a long time. The honest answer was complicated. Yes, I'd loved her, but somewhere along the way, she'd stopped seeing me as someone worth loving back. I loved you, I typed, until you made it clear that love wasn't enough. You needed more. So I became less visible and protected what I'd built. That's not your fault or mine. It just is. She didn't respond. 2 weeks later, Property Link signed a partnership with a national property management firm. The deal Kyle and I had been working toward for 3 years. The contract was worth $14 million over 5 years, with options for expansion. Kyle raised a beer in my tiny apartment. You did it, man. From warehouse supervisor to tech millionaire. That's a hell of a story. It's not about the money, I said. Then what's it about? I thought about Claire, about Eleanor's apology, about all the years I'd spent being invisible by choice and by necessity. It's about knowing your worth, I said finally, even when nobody else does. Kyle nodded. To knowing your worth. We clinked bottles. Outside, the sun was setting over Charlotte. Somewhere in this city, Claire was learning to see herself clearly for the first time. And I was free, truly free, to build whatever came next. 18 months after the divorce, I quit my job at Midland Distribution. My supervisor, a good man named Terry who'd never known anything about my other life, shook my hand with genuine sadness. You sure about this, Wells? You've been here almost 11 years. I'm sure, I said. Time for something new. Got another job lined up? Something like that. I walked out of that warehouse for the last time, climbed in my truck, still the same 2014 F-150, still covered in dust, and drove to the new Property Link headquarters. We'd moved out of the strip mall office 3 months ago into a proper building with 20 employees and space to grow. Kyle was waiting in my office. How's it feel? Weird, I admitted. Good weird. You're officially full-time now. No more double life. Yeah. I looked around the office. Glass walls, modern furniture, my name on the door. Graham Wells, co-founder and COO. No more hiding. Think I can pull it off? Kyle laughed. Man, you've been pulling it off for a decade. Now you just get to do it without the cover story. That evening, I went to a charity fundraiser. Kyle dragged me to something for affordable housing development. I was standing by the bar, uncomfortable in a suit, I'd bought specifically for the occasion, when a woman approached. "You're Graham Wells," she said. "Not a question." "I am. Sarah Miller. I'm with the Community Development Fund. I've been following Property Link's growth. What you've built is impressive." "Thank you. I heard you used to work at a warehouse while building the company." I smiled. "I did. That must have been exhausting." "It was necessary," I said. "Sometimes you have to protect what you're building until it's strong enough to stand on its own." Sarah studied me thoughtfully. "That's an interesting philosophy. Would you have coffee with me sometime? I'd love to hear more about your approach to business development." I was about to decline old habits, but stopped myself. The person I'd been, the one who needed invisibility to survive, didn't exist anymore. "I'd like that," I said. We exchanged numbers. She smiled and walked away, leaving me standing there realizing that maybe, finally, I could stop hiding. 3 weeks later, I had lunch with Claire. She'd asked to meet, said she had something to tell me. We sat at a quiet restaurant in South End, the awkwardness between us palpable. "I'm moving," Claire said. "Taking a job in Atlanta. Fresh start." "That's good. I hope it works out. I wanted to tell you in person. And to say," she paused, gathering courage, "you were right. About everything. I measured you by the wrong things. And I'm sorry." "I know," I said gently. "Your mom told me you've been working on yourself." Claire nodded. "It's hard, realizing you're the villain in your own story. But I'm trying. That's all anyone can do." We talked for another hour. Real conversation, maybe the first honest one we'd had in years. When we parted, there was no bitterness, just two people who'd learned expensive lessons about value and visibility. I drove back to my new apartment, a real one this time, with furniture and art and space to breathe, and found a text from Sarah. "Coffee tomorrow? I have a proposal for you." "Sounds good," I replied. That night, I stood on my balcony overlooking the city, thinking about everything that had led here. The years of silence, the warehouse shifts, the careful planning, the divorce, the revelation, the aftermath. Claire had called my salary pathetic. She wanted someone bigger, bolder, more visible. And the irony was, she'd been married to exactly that person the whole time. She just never bothered to look. But that chapter was closed now. The warehouse was behind me. The hiding was over. Property Link was thriving. And I was finally living as my whole self. No masks, no cover stories, no pretending to be smaller than I was. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't in proving people wrong. It's in knowing you don't have to prove anything at all.